The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Cosplay Alliance, our partners and affiliates. This episode of the Cosplay Alliance podcast may contain coarse language or sensitive subject matters. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Hey, welcome everyone to a very special episode, because normally we go live on Monday night at 8 p.m. and here we are, midday chat with Ryan Carr from the Incredible Group. We have a very fun thing to talk about today. You're always told you can never play with your toy or play with your food, but hey, yeah, we can play with our food now. So we're going to talk about this product here. It's a squishy scented toy that's all licensed. This one's the Sour Patch Kid. You've got, Ryan, you're playing with the Swedish Fish. I got a Swedish Fish in the package there. Anyways, Ryan Carr, you're in charge of licensing and also run the U.S. operations for Incredible Group.
That's right. Well, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
We are excited. This is kind of a new opportunity for us, and we jumped right on it when we found out that we could talk to you about toys. Because, hey, we love talking about cosplay and geek stuff. And can you get any more geeky or interactive than like this? Like this
yeah,
is...
I feel like you guys are kind of our target audience, if I'm being honest. I'm glad you like it, because if you didn't, we have a real problem here.
Well, it was funny because when I met with Anthony on the weekend and he handed off the toys, and one of the Cosplay Alliance teammates, Allison, I said to her, I'm like, hey, maybe we'll give these to the kids when you're done. And she's like, I don't think I want them to eat that big of a Sour Patch Kid. And I'm like, oh no, these are toys. These aren't. So right off the get-go, they look good. They smell like the real thing. How did we get to an idea into an actual product?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. We've been making squishy toys here at the Incredible Group for 1,000 years. Squishy toys have been super, super popular in the toy business for a long time as a fidgety type impulse product. Most toy stores or other places that you go that carry toys have, the little stuff right by the till, and squishy toys have just been some of the best performing items in there. And so, having been in this category for as long as we're always trying to come up with new ideas, new ways of doing it. So much of toy is about nostalgia and building on your childhood, but a lot of it is about newness too. So we were just casting about for something new. And I think in one of our spitballing sessions, somebody said, like scented squishy toys, there's not a lot of those. We could probably really do something interesting there. And then it was like, okay, if we were going to scent it, what would you do? Well, food, obviously you can make like food, scented, squishy. And, it was just one thing led to another. And then we just started firing, emails off randomly with a half-brain scheme and a napkin sketch of an idea to a few candy companies in particular, and Mondelez, who owns the Sour Patch brand and the Oreo brand and the Swedish Fish brand, amongst many other brands, kind of got back to us and was like, hey, this is sort of a cool idea. And we were like, really? Oh, okay, great. then let's do this. And then things got a whole lot more serious, and we had to figure out how to actually do it and how we actually wanted to, bring this type of product to life while really honoring the brands and making it cool and fun and interesting. And that took a long time. These toys are very simple toys, surprisingly intricate and difficult in some ways to make. And finally, we've brought them to market. Finally, these have started arriving in stores, and they're doing great. And so we're really excited about that. The response from people seems to be pretty universal. That it's like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is not what I expected, but this is pretty cool.
So I was gonna lead into the next question, but I think how long did it take from concept to product?
That's a great question. I think you could say it was about 18 months plus, a little longer than that, which is not like the longest cycle in the world, but definitely not the shortest. A lot of times you can come up with an idea, especially for something in a category that already exists. You could get that to market a lot faster. But there were just a lot of things we had to do. We had to, first of all, we had to, make the agreement with Mondelez and come to an understanding about how this was going to work. And then it was sort of like, oh, okay, we have this idea to make them squishy. But how big are they going to be? What does the package look like? How do we make this brand work? And what are people going to expect? And then another big one is the scent, getting the scent of the items right. How do you make a Sour Patch Kid orange scent? And that you find the right partner to do that, and then you go back and forth a lot trying to get it right. And it's just all these iterations, all these little things. It took time. We didn't want to also, Oreo's kind of an iconic brand. You can't get this wrong. Like you can't get a product that's a crappy product to market. You have to do something good. And so with every little thing, it was like, okay, no, we got to address that, fix that, change that, package this, whatever. And then finally we've gotten it into stores.
Well, it's funny because as the samples that we were sent, it was Sour Patch, the Swedish Fish. As you can see, I do not have the Oreo cookie.
I do.
Because Anthony's son Elijah, he grabbed it immediately, and I went on to the Incredible Group website today, and I see you're sold out of that product.
We might currently be. Yeah, it's been hot. Listen, here's the other thing. When you're making these products, you start with an idea and you're like, that's a great idea. Like this, people are going to love this. And then you spend months and months and months, if not years, trying to make it. And you get so far, it's as with anything, you get so far down into it that you lose all perspective and you're like, I don't know, maybe this is stupid. Maybe nobody's going to like it. People keep telling us it's a good idea, but it's like, maybe nobody's going to like this. Who knows? Maybe this is going to work or not. So now that we're getting some of this feedback, like your anecdote there, it's like, oh, thank God. We sunk a lot of time into this, not to mention energy, resources, and our heart and soul. And now it's like, oh, thank God it's working. People are liking it and buying it. And so.
Also, when you said 18 months, I figured that at least the concept, agreement with Mondelez, tooling, manufacturing, I figured you would have been at least 3 years.
Yeah, okay, so we're faster than what you thought. I mean, when we're making squishy toys, otherwise we would be, it could be 6 months. That we that quickly that you could have concept, to your point, tool it up, get it made, get it on the water, and boom. It doesn't. I guess I'm sort of comparing it to our timelines as it relates to having been in this category for so long, and normally how quickly we can bring things to life.
Well, and I guess if you're making something that wasn't licensed or branded, it's a lot quicker. You're like, I'm going to make a squishy goat. Okay.
Yes.
Come up with the concept of a goat.
Yes.
Maybe not find the goat smell, but manufacture a goat.
Probably not a good idea. I mean, who knows? There's probably a customer for that. No, you're absolutely right. The licensing brings a new dimension into it, where you are this, essentially you become the steward for somebody else's brand into this thing that you're doing, and you have to run every aspect of that by them to make sure that you're aligned. And when you're starting from something net new that doesn't really exist, you know what I mean? It's not like we were making Oreo cereal where there'd be a lot of history parameters, whatever, that would help sort of shape that. This was net new, like, how big should it be? What should it cost? What should it feel like? And we had a lot of ideas, and Mondelez has ideas, and then you figure it out and make it work.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the popularity of squishy toys and the toyetic factor. Hey, I've watched other documentaries, so I've heard that one. That's the cool name that you talk about. We throw that
around in the toy business a lot. We really like that word. We really like that word.
Now I'm as I'm about to ask this question, and I'm like, I'm answering myself. I've been playing with this thing the whole time we have been talking. So, what is the popularity in squishy toys? Where have you seen the market go? over the
So
years?
it's that actually is quite interesting. So like tactile, fidgety, just this isn't rocket science. Like when there's a squishy thing in your hand, that's been around for a long, long time. Now, this category did get a huge boost from the pandemic, which sounds funny to say. I realize, but during the pandemic in particular, so many people having been thrust into. Oh, I just lost my monitors for a second there. Sorry.
Oh,
So
I
many
can
people
still hear and see you.
Yeah, good. Just panicked. So many people getting thrust into a remote situation, being remote school, remote work, whatever.
Yep.
That was weird, and fidgety, like things that people had at their desks, whether it was for kids while they were doing school, people while they were on Zoom calls for the first time in their life, and and all these fidgety type things. I think collectively, a lot of people were like, "All right, yeah, this helps a little." Whether there's science behind that or not, we're certainly not experts around that. But we did see that there was a really big desire for fidgety type stuff, and so squishy toys really, that category really got a boost during the pandemic, and it kind of never came down. And so back to your question, I'm a really fidgety person. I don't know if that's coming across, and I just, whether I'm talking to somebody, whether I'm on a Zoom, whether I'm driving, whatever, I just always have these types of things.
Yep.
And so when you can make it into, like with the Swedish Fish, where it just have, we used a gummy type substance inside that just gives it a really satisfying kind of squish. You just don't put it down, and it's simple. This is the experience that it delivers. Not much more than that, and it really, there's a nostalgia aspect to it that is cool as well.
Yeah.
But it really does come down to, like, it just feels cool. It's kind of and can be soothing, I guess.
Well, and if you even go back to the 90s and the popularity of the like the stress ball, and
Totally, yeah, that's where it all comes from.
Yeah, so even now, like, wouldn't you rather squish something that looks like a piece of your childhood than just a generic ball, or somebody you squeeze and their eyes pop out?
That's the idea. That's the whole idea.
Now, who is the? Okay, so we know that the target audience is really anybody who needs or would like to play with this sort of experience. Packaging says 13 plus.
Mm.
Where do you normally see the market going for this?
We definitely see this as like a tween type item. That's sort of the key niche with this. Certainly, all sorts of people can enjoy it, but definitely that's the key niche. Mondelez themselves has an understandable sensitivity towards marketing to children. So these, really, we aligned on the idea that these are for tweens and adult. I mean, frankly, I think adults are buying these things up like crazy out of the gate, is a lot of the feedback that we're getting. So that's definitely the target market that we have in mind.
Okay. Now with Mondelez, they have so many iconic properties, like not just like for first out of the gate, you've pretty much picked three of the biggest properties, in my opinion, with Mondelez. Like Sour Patch Kids are huge. Oreo, like probably anybody watching you sitting there squeezing the Oreo toy is probably getting the smell of an Oreo cookie in their head. Was there any other brands within Mondelez that were on the list of possibilities?
Yeah, I have to be, I don't want to divulge too much of our secret plans here at the Incredible Group, but yeah, I'll put it to you this way. This category, to your point, we started with some of the most iconic ones, some of the ones that seemed easiest is the wrong word, but that had the most direct path to a product, if I can put it that way. And we wanted to make sure that we could make these things, we could make them well, that they'd be cool, that they'd come to market, that people would like them. And if the early indications that we have are to be believed, it seems like people like this sort of thing and what we're doing, which is great, which is awesome. And so that being the case, we have a lot of ideas as to how we could expand this and get make more and more products that are more and more interesting and weirder. There's definitely some way weirder ones that we could do. You brought up Ritz crackers before with Mondelez, and it's like, oh yeah, squishy Ritz in some way. I will say though, as we're considering these items and making these things, it always has to. It's going to sound a little grandiose for what these are, but it always has to have a reason for being. Like with each one of them, whether it's the smell that's so iconic, whether like with Oreo, it's with our Oreo products actually not scented like an Oreo, since an Oreo scent is so specific in particular, and the Oreo brand team kind of let us know like you're not going to be able to do it. Like you just don't, it's just not going to work. And we're like, okay, fair enough. And so we had to think like, what's going to make the Oreo toy special? And it's a simple thing, but we made the cookie layers differently than we made the icing layer. So it's like the icing layer kind of squishes out of the squishy. That doesn't sound like much, but for us, it was like, oh, that's the thing. That's what's cool about it. Okay.
It's funny when you were playing with it, because I was playing with my Sour Patch, you're playing with the Oreo, and that's the first thing I noticed, is because it's more of like it ballooned out.
And again, I want to stress at every turn, like, this is not rocket science. We know that we're making silly things that bring a smile to your face, and that's what we're doing. But we do take it really seriously. Like, you really, if you're going to be successful at this, you really have to think about these things. Like, we could just keep cranking out the same, like, squishy this, squishy that, squishy this, squishy that, and it's like, who cares? But you got to have like, oh, this one would be cool because the package is going to look like this, and that way. And this one would be cool because they have a mascot character, and that mascot character would be really fun in this toyetic form factor. Toy business. That kind of thing. And so as we consider some of these other opportunities, whether it's with Mondelez or other food and candy companies, that's always front of mind. Like, how do we make this into a cool toy? And if it's just gonna be the same as everything else we've made,
Well, I know you can't, like, I don't expect you to go too inside baseball on the discussions with Mondelez, but I'll give you the shopping list of some of the things I saw on their website of brands I think would be cool, for definitely being, Mondelez and, Ritz, all that, Mr. Christie crackers. So that's a Canadian brand. Can you get any more Canadian than Peak Freen's cookies?
Yeah.
Peak Freen with the jelly inside and the jelly can squish out.
Good one.
Or even if you're able to replicate the smell and texture of Cadbury cream eggs.
I have some ideas there. Have some ideas there.
Of course, I had said Ritz crackers, but also Chips Ahoy cookies. If you could,
be amazing.
Create the chocolate chip smell, man.
If we can't nail the scent on that, we got to quit trying, because that is iconic.
Well, those were some of the things I saw in regards to cool. Hey, Wave 2 comes out if there's possibilities.
We're working on it.
Of other toys. Retail locations. Where does Incredible Group distribute the majority of your products?
So we're all over Canada and the US. In Canada, some of the best places to get it right now: Indigo bookstores, Mastermind Toys, and there's lots of independent shops, local toy stores, and what have you that brought it in. Those are local toy stores are actually near and dear to our heart as well. And so it's rolling out as we speak to all kinds of locations across the country. In the US, and we honestly, I'll tell you something else about it. The interesting thing about these products is that, sure, they're toys, and so you think about toy stores where they could live very comfortably, and that makes total sense. But then we have them into stores where you'd be like, oh, I didn't think of that. Like, one of our biggest early supporters on this are the Spirit Halloween stores in Canada and the US, all over the country. And you think like, wait, why does that? Oh, right, of course. These are candy toys. Like they're about Halloween candy. Oh my gosh. And they have their little check lane checkout area, and they're looking for cool things, and they were like, "Hey, this is the coolest thing ever." It's like,
well, and it would be an impulse item because somebody's waiting in line, they start playing with whatever, and it'd be like, okay.
yeah.
Speaking about that, what's the price point on it?
So it ranges, but in the U.S. they're about $6, in Canada about $8-9, that kind of thing.
Okay, so again, again, an impulse item.
The expression that we use in the toy business sometimes is pocket money, where it's again, I'm trying to stay humble here. Nobody makes a planned shopping excursion to go get a squishy Sour Patch Kid. That's generally not something that's in their head when they leave their house. But when they're standing there and they see it and they're by the checkout in like a grocery store or a toy store or clothing stores, American Eagle, by the way, is one of our bigger customers as well for this kind of thing in their checkout area. The customer's standing there, and to your point, it's like, oh, that's really cool, and that's not a lot of money, and that's a silly little thing, and I'm going to sit at my computer squishing this all day long, and you know what? Into the basket. That's how our thing happens. So the price point is key, keeping it as low as possible and accessible as possible, and then just that what I just described can happen in so many different types of store we're getting placement all over the place.
Well, hey, Archie Comics is one of the biggest comics in the world, and what is their success? Yep, checkout lane, usually at grocery or department stores.
Yes.
So you're standing in line, $3.99. You can get an Archie Digest. I think almost every kid, that one of their first comics was an Archie Digest.
I mean, if that isn't a staple of garage sales, the Archie box. That's sort of just stacks and stacks.
Yeah. $10 you buy 100 Archies.
Yeah, we're trying to sell it to each other. Like, no, I have a box of those kids.
Well, and on the press release, to see like some of the Canadian locations: Cineplex, Party City, Indigo, Mastermind, Jean Cousteau, Canada's Wonderland, Shoppers Drug Mart.
You see what I'm saying? It's like these are these are a group of stores that otherwise you would be like, they don't carry the same things generally, but in this case, it can kind of work in all sorts of different places.
Yeah, even some of your U.S. locations include like Cracker Barrel, and
I was going to bring Cracker Barrel up. So that another fantastic partner, and you think like, isn't that a restaurant where you get chicken fried steak? And yes, it is, but they also have their little retail shops at the outside of each one, and they like to do cool and interesting things. And this was just a great fit.
Yeah, and they go on the nostalgia factor. So even their vintage toy section, kind of goes also in with their vintage candy and sodas and all that good stuff.
It does.
Now, kind of circling back in production, what kind of like when it comes down to production of the squishies, like, is it a certain tooling that you got to use, or is it like
total inside baseball? The fascinating tooling process of our squishy toys. Yeah, no, it's it's funny you ask that. You would be surprised. It's like it's the degree to which you can automate this. It's a little trickier than you might think. The gist of it is that you're making the bladder of the product and then putting the filling in. Where it starts to get trickier is that while you're making the bladder of the product, if you're scenting the product, the scent is actually injected into the bladder of the product as the bladder of the product is being made, which is trial and error when you're trying to figure that out for the first time.
Yep.
And then of course the packaging and all these aspects as well. So it's not, I would say it's not a super complicated process, but it just has a few tricky elements that you really have to get right to make sure it turns out like you'd hope.
Now, how about units? What is your annual production, or do you have those numbers exactly on how many units?
It's how to answer that question. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands to begin with.
Yep.
And then it's going to be a question of how high is high. We have the capacity to make quite a lot of these little guys. And we're kind of excited to see, again, if the early, we've had a few of our retail customers put it on shelf and call us up within a week and be like, yeah, we need more. That's a good thing. That's
Yes.
very, when you work on something for as long as we have with this, it's like, oh, again, thank God. So given that and touch wood with continued success, more, higher and higher and higher from there.
If you produce a product and don't sell it, that just makes you a collector.
Yeah, right. Got it. We'll all have offices like yours that are just
Yeah, exactly. No,
oh, that's a lot. We really like Swedish Fish. Holy cow.
Yeah. Now, Incredible Group. A little bit more about Incredible Group and Incredible Brands. What is the business model there? I know that we talked briefly. You run U.S. operations, but you're also a Canadian-based company.
That's right. Yeah. So we're based in Toronto. Company's been in business for 23 years now. Started by a couple of friends who were actually DJs at parties, is how they began, and then they realized that they could sell a lot of little trinkets at these parties, and sort of thought, actually, it's probably a better career choice than being a DJ for the rest of our careers. And so that was the origins of the Incredible Group. We're a distribution company in Canada, so we take a lot of other people's brands that are, generally speaking, based outside of the country, and will handle their Canadian operations, their sales and products and marketing and everything. And then, as is the case with our squishies here that we're talking about today, we also have our own lines that we design in-house. We have an extensive creative department, a really talented creative director, and we design all this stuff in-house and make a lot of our own products in this category and a few others as well. And with those products, the ones that are ours, that's the ones that I sell into the US, which is very new for us. We've only been at it a couple of years, and growing like a house on fire, I'm happy to say. So but we're all Canadians in the company, and all toy people who've been at this for a couple of decades in one way or another. I'm just kind of happy to have a thing that we're growing and working on together, and now bringing to more and more markets. We're even talking to some potential partners internationally. It's kind of fun.
Well, it is interesting to be a Canadian company and be able to expand operations. Like, as far as when it comes down to that, essentially that's what Canadians want when they start a business, is international success. And the fact that you're distributing it into the US and also distributing, international properties within Canada as well. When I, looking at the website, like, you have Pokemon, Monster Jam, Harry Potter, Paw Patrol. The ones that sort of stuck out to me is,
you've heard of them.
Yeah, the ones that stuck out, especially to me, as far as my interest goes, the Spin Master version, the Spin Master product of DC, which some of those are skewed to a younger audience as well. Sure. But there's also some very cool things within the DC properties with Spin Master that kind of fit into the guys in their 40s or 50s who like collecting action figures. And of course, the one that stuck out with me is the ultimate fidget spinner, and probably I think the most successful fidget spinner of all time, the Rubik's Cube.
Oh, interesting take on that one. Comparing it to a fidget spinner. Yeah. Rubik's is sort of an icon. That one. That is another Spin Master Toys property, and Spin Master is a new partnership for us. Another great, fantastic Toronto-based company. Talk about a Canadian company that made good. Holy cow, those Spin Master guys, they're pretty incredible themselves, put it that way. And to have the opportunity to work with the Rubik's brand, especially when you've been in the toy business for a long time, it's like that one's a bit of an icon.
that one. Well, and I have several Rubik's Cubes, because again, that was my original fidget spinner, and I was also very good at mine that I never peeled the labels off of it. Might have broke the cubes off a little bit, back in the days. But no, as far as the product itself, I'll just won't take up the rest of your afternoon. But
I could talk about it for hours. Yeah.
Well, me too. But hey, we still have to get back to work at some point. But it is a very interesting product. Again, I've been goofing around and playing with it, it pretty much answered a lot of my questions when it came down to why are these things important. Very simple, but also have a very positive feedback.
Yeah. Again, it's like an intense humility that I'm trying to project here. It's like we know it's a simple thing that we do, and it's not rocket science, but it is satisfying to make a thing that you're like, oh, I can't put this down. Well, all right, mission accomplished.
Well, I hope everyone watching this, if you're walking through the retail shelves and you see this little guy looking at you and waving, grab one, pick it up, give it a try. You won't be disappointed. So, but I would like to thank you very much, Ryan, for joining me this afternoon. It was an awesome talk. I really enjoyed talking to you about the product. And hey, any opportunity I have to talk about the toy industry, I am definitely down for that.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate this.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much, Ryan. All right, everyone else, make sure you tune in next time to Cosplay Alliance Podcast.
If you're watching this episode on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out other episodes of the Cosplay Alliance podcast. The Cosplay Alliance podcast is also available in audio format on all major podcast